Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff, and this is the epic Treasure Tales show that we've been talking about for a few weeks now. And it's going to be a good one tonight. I tell you what, we've got a gang here. We're in Sebastian, Florida. We've got a nice house we rented. We've had a good dinner. We've had a few cocktails. We got the epic bunch of treasure hunters. It's the epitome of treasure hunters that we have with us tonight. And I have to tell you that as an old person, an old man, I feel very blessed because I have a lot of really good friends. And these friends, when I call them and I ask them, would you like to do a treasure tales with us? And they've come from a good distance. They're just not like walking out their back door and crossing the street. Some of them have driven a couple hours to come and be on this show for you tonight. And so I just feel very blessed that I have these friends. I'm surrounded by good friends here. We're going to have a really good weekend of treasure hunting and fellowship. And it's going to be an epic show. So what our format is going to be for tonight is if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get them to the various people. We've got a couple of our guests that couldn't make it tonight. Jimmy Crossbones, his wife had got COVID, and we are saying prayers for her, fast recovery. He couldn't be with us tonight. And Mark Littleton is just not feeling very well at all. I think he has the flu. I don't think he has COVID, but he does have the flu, so he wasn't able to be with us tonight. In the house with us this weekend, my wife Susan and I, we have Tim and Tina, the Mumbles Man, and we have Ricky T and his wife Deb, and we have Art and Rose Frazier, the Diggin' Fraziers. So we're looking for a weekend of fun, fellowship, and hopefully we're going to find a lot of treasure. We're going to hook up with some of our guests to go out on the beach in the next few days and see what we can't find or not find, whatever it is, but we'll have a really good time and we'll get some really good tips. And that's the good thing about having good friends. And for a lot of the stuff that's gone on tonight, I can't thank my wife Susan enough. She has worked very hard helping me get the meal together. And our friends, Joe Vizzi. Joe, we love you, brother. He supplied me with a case of Italian wines for our show tonight and our trip this weekend. Ricky T is supplying the liquor for everybody this weekend. And you know what? When you got friends like that, you don't need anybody else. So we're going to get after it here real quick. Remember, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. I will do my best to make sure that they get asked and answered. We're going to turn the camera around now. As far as a time limit on the show tonight, we don't have one. We're going to go until we get tired and the questions stop, because these folks, I'm telling you, they've lived it. Everything that you dream about, they've lived it. And they're very happy to share it with you. So if you got something you want to know, something you want to ask them, please do so. And we'll make it an epic show. A shout out to my brother from another mother, Phil Myers. Phil, we wish you were here. Everybody wishes you were here. You really need to come on some of these trips with us because your friends miss you, and we'd love to have you with us. So that being said, I'm going to turn the camera around now, and it's going to be off to the races. This is an epic treasure tale. So let me turn the camera around, and I'll introduce our guest to you. Let's get it all set up here. Make sure we've got everybody in camera. I think we do. Yes, so on the left you will see we have, that is Fred Bank. He is the consummate treasure hunter on the Treasure Coast. Back there we have Sid and then KT. They are from the Etosha. They found it. Everything you ever seen about Mel Fisher's treasure, those two were right in the thick of it. Back there you have the legend of the Treasure Coast. You have Terry Shannon. And y'all know him and love him, and he's going to tell us some more stories tonight. And then there's the just incomparable Captain Carl Fizmer. So everybody knows Captain Fizz. So we are going to get it kicked off. So Fred, why don't you introduce yourself to these folks? Tell them a little bit about you.
Okay, my name is Fred Banky, and I've been melee detecting the Treasure Coast for a long time now. enough time to write a book about all of my finds, and most of them were on Turtle Trail. So I've had a lot of success there, finding everything from cannonballs, musket balls, just about you name it, any part of a ship. And I've got some new finds to show you tonight. The book I wrote is called The Real Deal, Metal Detecting the Treasure Coast, and it gives you information on what wrecks are on what beaches and where to find the beaches, and it even tells you if there's a bathroom on the beach or not.
And Fred, might I ask you, you do have those in stock. Did Phil at Myers Metal Detectors?
Yes, he does.
He has them in stock?
He does, and they've got them at the Mel Fisher Treasure Museum and the McClarty Museum.
Very good, very good. Okay, now we go to Syd and KT. Everybody kind of knows you, but for those that may not, because we got a lot of new viewers, take it away.
Go ahead. Well, I'm KT Bud Jones, and I was part of Mel's Golden Crew back in the 80s and 90s. We were there to find the Atocha main pile, finding it, salvaging it, bringing it up, restoring it, conserving it, documenting it, and sharing the history. So we're thrilled to be able to be here tonight and talk a little bit about some of those stories, some of them true.
And don't forget, Katie, we also found the Santa Margarita, sister ship to the Atocha, as well as we worked the 1715 fleet and had some good successes there as well.
Plus, you guys do a lot of other stuff. You do some really interesting stuff with some of the, it's World War II type era planes that y'all do?
Yes, we both work for a company in Kissimmee, Stallion 51, where they fly World War II fighters, which would be a P-51 Mustang. And we're also involved with a World War II bomber, a B-25 Mitchell bomber called Panchito, and we do air shows and training in that to help out that.
Do you give rides in that Panchito?
We do.
Oh,
cool. As a matter of fact, right after Sun and Fun, a week or so ago, we were doing some rides in Kissimmee for some lucky folks that decided they wanted to have a taste of that World War II experience.
Well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Would really be fun.
Some of them have their hearing back.
Now, y'all have some books too, I know.
Yes, we want to get yours for sure. For the bathroom, there's nothing else. No, but
It's kind of rough for that.
Really, I got to get that book. Well, we have a couple of them. We have Coins of the Lost Galleons, which is a bit of a primer on all of the coins that somewhere between the 1500s and up to almost 1800s that you might find on the galleons here along the Treasure Coast as well as the Keys. And then Syd has a book that he's written.
Yep. It's called Atocha Treasure Adventures, Sweat of the Sun, Tears of the Moon. And it actually gives an insight from somebody who was actually there. Because so many of the stories were written by folks who were not crew members. They were outside writers who came in for a week or two. And what we often ask, what's like to go out there and actually do this for a living? And so this book kind of gives you insights as to what it was like to find the Atocha, the Margarita, worked the 1715 fleet, the whole gamut of the Florida treasure hunting famous wrecks.
And I have to tell you, I read that book, and that is a spellbinder. It's one of those that you don't, I mean, you're sitting there, you're going to sleep, and you keep turning pages, you want to read it, because it's really funny when you can live it through your writing, Syd. You know, like you're there, some of the meals you had to put up with, you know, and, you know, you didn't get paid all the time, but you were out there, and those days are long, the sun is hot. A lot of people don't realize just how hot it can be when you're out on the ocean with the sun beating down.
You pretty much can smell the diesel reading the book. Now, granted, you know, I was there and it's familiar, but you really sort of feel the dive ladder under your feet, and you can smell the diesel and taste the salt water in your regulator. I think Syd does a great job of making
it was an outstanding book. I mean, when I read that, I was there. I was with you all on the ship, especially on the Arbutus. I mean, if people read the book, folks, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. That is just hilarious. It was absolutely a fantastic book, Syd.
Thank you.
And kudos to you on that. And the coin book, KT, that is, I tell you what, that is the standard that people want to identify coins.
Well, get you started. There's always lots more books out there. They have a lot more detail, but let's get you started. you start knowing where to look and for more detail and more information. So
Well,
when you find something on the beach, now you go, oh, I know what this is, and then you want to know more.
Well, you can't get much better information than like you holding one in your hand and say, well, let's describe it this way. So that's another big bonus. And I think Phil has that in stock.
He has both of
If
them.
not, where can they get it, KT?
Well, we actually have a website. It's called Tote Your Treasure Adventures, and a YouTube channel. We've been sharing some of our videos that we took through the years, the underwater videos, etc., on the YouTube channel. So it's a Tote Your Treasure Adventures, and you can purchase it there, but also at the shop, at the metal detector shop.
Yeah,
I think
Phil's
Carrie's both of
at
them.
Myers Metal Detectors. Very good. And then we go to the legend. The legend of the Treasure Coast. And I have to tell you, folks, Terry, who is the legend of the Treasure Coast, just got a legend. And I know these people in Turkey. They're friends of mine. And I don't have one yet. But Terry goes, hey, they just called me up and I wanted to give you a legend, man. But he is a legend, so I guess he does deserve it. So Terry, for those who don't know you, and there's probably nobody that doesn't know you, please introduce yourself.
Okay, well,
And a
I'm
little bit about you.
Terry Shannon. I'm a snowbird from Minnesota. My career and life was law enforcement. And when I retired, long before I retired, I came down to Florida, visited the McClarty Museum, and they had a bunch of Spanish treasure there. I asked the ranger if they still found it. He brought out this notebook, showed me where people had found stuff on the beach. They took their picture, and that became my goal, is to get back there. And I have my lovely wife Jean with me. She's very supportive. We're a team. And I've done, I guess by everybody's standard, I've done quite well on the beach. I've done well finding some Spanish stuff. And I actually think I found the oldest coin, or at least one of the oldest coins found on the Treasure Coast. I got a Carlos Nuana 2 real, dated, well, the answer is G for, I can't pronounce the name. They only work from 1544 to 1548. So I actually got 2 of those coins on the beach. And so I've been very fortunate. And I've written some books. I've got 5 books out there.
Great books.
Well, thank you. The first book I ever wrote was Detecting the Treasure Coast. And it's kind of a how-to, with a lot of pictures, and it's been well received. I sell a lot of these books. And my latest book is Metal Detecting: A Beginner's Guide. But it's not only for beginners. It gets down to some of the basics, but it's got some interesting stories in it, and it's been well received also. And I must say, it's an honor to be included with this group tonight. I'll be walking tall tomorrow.
Well, I tell you what, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm a very, very blessed man because of not only with y'all, I call y'all my friends. And when I did call you to ask you about this, everybody says yes. I mean, right away, no problem at all. The friends we have here with us tonight, it just doesn't get any better than that. And just for the audience, I did ask Jean, Terry's wife, about his escapades on the beach. And she just said, well, as long as he keeps producing, he can stay around. So I guess you're safe for a while, Terry.
I came home one night, one afternoon, and I had a real nice ring. And I gave it to my wife, which a good husband does. And I said, do you mind if I go out tomorrow? And she said, you can go right now, as far as you're
Smart lady.
Yes, she is.
And I tell you what, I have been to Terry's house. I have seen the pile of rings on the table, and I've seen the bling on Jean's fingers. I mean, it is immense. And she just said she keeps trying them on. She says, oh, this one's okay, that one's okay. She's done well. But trust me, she has done well.
One more point. I used to be in law enforcement, and I ran for sheriff in Becker County and won. So I was a sheriff. I was the top gun in the county, most powerful man in the county, until I drove into that driveway at night.
That's right. And he tells us stories about one of his idols was Buford Pusser, but they used to call him walking short in Minnesota, not walking tall.
My nickname was Pussy.
That's right. That's right. So then we move on to the I guess the legend of all time, Carl Fismer, Captain Carl Fismer. I tell you what, the man has had the experience. He's got the knowledge, and the one thing that you have to admire about Captain Fizz, he will share his knowledge in a heartbeat. He doesn't ask for anything for it. He's written some books. He's had the experiences. He will share the experiences. And a nicer fella you really would never want to meet. So for those that don't know you at all, Captain, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, like you had mentioned, my name's Carl Fismer. I'm starting this season. This is year number 51 in Treasure. I've had a lot of good times and a lot of bad times. I'm extremely lucky. I got to work with Jack Haskins. Jack Haskins is one of the main players that ever was in this business. I spent 32 years with Jack. And the only reason I know what I do is that a lot of that rubbed off on me. But anyhow, I've written a couple of books. Actually, this was called Uncharted Waters. Sam Milner co-wrote it. He's actually I guess the brains behind this, because one day he came up to me and he said, you know, you should write a book. And I'd written maybe 15 or 20 magazine articles. It's just a few pages. I tried a book, but it's a whole new career when you're writing a book, a whole new career. So Sam Milner, he made his living playing guitar and singing every bar between Key West and North Carolina. But he started writing books. He did pretty good. So he said, I can help you with your book. He wrote a lot of them. And I said, well, what I have to do? He gave me a microphone and said, just start telling those stories. So I started telling those stories. In about 5 minutes, he said, shut up. And then he handed me a bottle of Captain Morgan. And about 20 minutes later, he said, okay, now start talking into the tape machine. And I did, and I just kept on talking until this is a big, fat, thick book. And
that's the abridged division.
Yeah, it's really, and I thought that was my whole life. And then it wasn't until later, after this was published, and Sam came over to my house, and he saw some of my notes and pictures from some places I wasn't supposed to be going. And he said, well, why didn't you tell me about this? He said, we got another book. So the book number 2 is thin, but it's got everything that I forgot to talk about in this.
That was a different bottle.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. A big bottle. And I have a couple of kids. And I showed this to my daughter, and I said, hey, honey, I got a new book that's come out, Man Overboard. She looked at that, and she said, wouldn't it be easier to dive if you had one of them things on your face? So that's her interest in what I've been doing.
Well, you know, you're her dad. So.
Yeah, I said, thanks, kid. Come here. But all in all, things are going good. As far as the metal detecting goes, I do a lot of lectures. I've got one coming up next week in St. Augustine. And the most asked question is, where's a good place to go metal detecting? This guy knows. It's the 1715 fleet. That's the best place in the whole world. And I'll talk to people that actually live in Fort Pierce. And so many of them don't even know that there's a whole fleet of ships that sank there. And I said, well, why do you think they call this a treasure coast? And they said, well, the sun's shining. And I said, yeah, that's not the reason. Plus, and here's what I tell everybody, and it's absolutely true. To my knowledge, there has been 2 Charles II Escudos found on the 1715 fleet. The state, of course, took one. But I used to dive with Carl Clausen. That shows you how far back I go. And Carl Clausen told me about another Charles II ate the Scudo. And my feeling is that if you, well, the assayer didn't build them dives just to punch out 2 coins. There's got to be more of them somewhere. And if you were to get lucky enough, and, you know, the gold is supposedly in the captain's cabin, and once the ballast is dumped and they hit bottom a few times, now you have a wooden boat and that thing's going into shore. That's exactly what happened here. And if you get lucky, I wouldn't doubt if you can find a Charles II native Scudo right over here in Orlando that would bring $1 million at auction.
I hope I find one this weekend.
Well, I'll let you keep 10%.
Okay, good. I'll split it with you.
Which is better than what, with the state. We went up to that wonderful museum up in Tallahassee, the State Museum. They have a beautiful display of 1715 and shipwreck memorabilia and artifacts. Of course, no names are listed of who found them, etc. Unbelievable amount of gold. Unbelievable amount of gold. And they're supposed to take, you know, one example of each. There's an awful lot of examples of the same thing over and over again, but awesome collection.
I mentioned Carl Clausen. He was the first state underwater archaeologist, first one. And I'm going to give him this. He actually cared about the artifacts. I mean, he really did. I met him. I was on the Sarasota Fire Department for a while, and the paper said, state archaeologist Carl Clausen giving a lecture at one of the old folks' homes. So I went to hear it, and Clausen said that, you know, the state doesn't really care about the gold and the silver. He said that the artifacts are our main concern, and they must be preserved and taken care of. And so after the end, he said, any questions? And I raised my hand. He said, yes, question. Yes, sir. And I'll tell you, he was to the point where he knew no matter what I said, he had the answer. I'm that way myself today. I don't think you can ask me something I can't answer. After 50 years, I better know it. And so Carl Clausen said, go ahead. And I said, if that's true about the state only caring about the artifacts and the gold and the silver is not all that important, why do you suppose it is out of several hundred applications to work the shipwrecks, the only ones the state approves of is the known treasure wrecks? And Carl went, that's a good question. You want to stay after tonight and we can talk better? He'd never been stumped before. But a week later, they gave the permit on that merchant ship down in Key West. So don't ever get caught in that lie again. And yeah, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm excessively bitter about the state of Florida. D.L. Cheney and I, we got arrested once on the cabin site, and it was just a formality. Like, you're illegally diving on a state wreck. No, we're not. We had to go before the judge and plead not guilty. I went home to, I lived in Key Largo, figuring that, you know, the red tape is going to take a while. DL got federal Judge King to write a fast report saying these guys are legal, they're allowed to work there. We had been picking on that for like 7 or 8 weeks, and we're picking up hundreds of coins, hundreds of Marine Patrol driving back and forth and just looking. But then one day we hit it lucky. It was 5 gold coins and 3 gold toothpicks. And boom, next day is when we got arrested. So anyway, then Judge King wrote the thing to the state, and to DL had a copy of it. He called me up and he said, we're going back to work. And I said, I'll be there first thing in the morning. He said, I'm going out today. So him and a friend of ours, Chuck Harehold, went out. Sure enough, here comes the Marine Patrol. But this time, 5 minutes till 5, they board them, they handcuff them, and they made sure they couldn't phone in for a bail. 5 o'clock it's cut off. So they're going to make DL spend the night in jail because of the maximum penalty on a 3rd-degree misdemeanor was a $200 fine. But by God, we're going to show him now where he's going to spend the night in jail. DL was a pilot at Eastern Airline, and he was a pilot in Korea during the war over there. Gun-ho, most gun-ho American you ever saw, because God did salute the flag, mom's apple pie, we're all playing for the same team here. And he was talking about the bureaucrats in the state, and I said, DL, how old are you? He said, 52. I said, how did you live so long and believe that crap? That's our enemy out there. But he didn't believe me till he spent the night in jail. Do you remember a guy named Gene Evans? He's one of the old guys from way back. Well, been dead a long time. And for some reason, he was in the jail that night. And he called me up and he said, Fizz, DL's having another heart attack. He had had several and 2 open heart surgeries. And you have that kind of stuff back in the 70s. And he still had wires in his chest and things. And he said, DL's having another heart attack, and they're laughing at him because they think he's just trying to get out of jail, which he never should. 3rd-degree misdemeanor, $200 fine. They're going to teach it. So anyway, DL went to intensive care for 30 days, and then he died. And he was the guy that gave me my big break. I'm stuck down there. I was working with Art McKee, the father of modern day treasure hunting. Art was in the hospital in Homestead, Florida, and I talked to him on the phone every day, and he said, Fizz, I'm coming home tomorrow, and we're going to go out on the Black Ledge on the 1733 fleet. I said, that's great. Art McKee's coming home. He has a heart attack on the way and dies. And now I'm stuck. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I run into DL Cheney at the dive shop filling tanks. And he said, Carl, how would you like to work with Jack and myself? You know, it's like, are you kidding me, working with the 2 big guys there? And they just had the biggest gold strike ever on the 1733 fleet. I have a lot of pictures in my camera if you want to see that. Anyway, so of course I jumped at the chance, and Jack Haskins said, DL, don't educate him, you're just training the competition. So then I made Jack eat those words because he was going to live for 32 more years, and I was with him on everything he said and did. And the only reason I know what I know is because I worked 32 years. DL died, and I worked 32 years with Jack Haskins. And his lawyer, I didn't know, I thought he had family, but his lawyer came to me and said, you got Jack's house, you got Jack's car, you got 2 cats, and you've got 320,000 pages of archival research. Biggest and best private collection in the world. And I realize now we don't have to worry to kiss the King of Spain's butt, even though he don't allow us in there no more. He can shove them up, you know where. And I'm positive now that Jack knew this was coming, and that he got, I'm going to say, every scrap of Spanish galleon archival research in his 20 years of doing archival studies. And that's all I got to say about that.
We've got a few questions here. Andrew T. from Canada wants to know, what is Terry's best ring that he's found?
I've got some old ones. I got one this last year from the 1500s, but I found an emerald ring, 4.7 carat emerald with 16 diamonds set in platinum, and I took that in and had it appraised, and that was about 3-4 years ago, $11,000. So it's worth more.
I remember dropping that.
You know, I've heard that before.
We have a question from Medicine Man RN Treasure Hunter. He wants to know, collectively, how many years experience combined is sitting here at the table. So Fred, how many years have you been at it?
Close to 20 years now.
Sid and KT, it's been a long time for y'all.
Yeah, professionally, 20 years.
And unprofessionally.
Well, we're starting back up again. Sort of got interested by doing detecting on the beach through some friends who got a detector. Said, "Oh, we want to, know where all the sites are." And we had seen your books, and they had read his books. We said, "Well, we know where the 1715 fleet is offshore, so we'll go and walk on the beaches with you." Well, gee, this sort of looks fun. We've been away from it for a while since moving away from Mel Fisher and Key West. Well, we'll get a detector. And then we started detecting. Went, this would be more fun if we were in the water again. And so starts, the addiction of getting back in the water. So, first time around 20-some years, and now let's get another 20. What do you think, Sid?
Well, you kind of forgot about the taste of the mouthpiece, didn't you?
It comes back real fast.
Real
and
quick.
working under the boxes, there's just nothing like that in hand fanning. Nothing like it.
Terry?
Okay, we came down here in 2005, and that's really when I got started. And like I'm a snowbird, and I'm retired, so I do it 12 months out of the year. I'm down here for 6 to 7 months on the Treasure Coast. I'm really blessed that way. And then when I go home in Minnesota, there's a river, the Otter Tail River, where kids tube on, and I was finding 80 to 100 rings every year out of that river. I grew up on that river as a kid, and I played in it. I was probably 8, 9 years old when I started playing in that river. I'm 81 now, and I'm still playing in that river. That's a wonderful place.
And Fizz, I know you went detecting with Jesus, right?
He invented the pulse induction.
Well, that's what I thought.
Well, I didn't do it.
What did you say,
That's what I
51
thought.
years or something like that?
Yeah, this is year number 51. And the first 6 were horrible and terrible. And then I was on a fire department, and they gave me my choice. When I took all the tests, I scored pretty good. They said, well, you can be a policeman or you can be a fireman. And I said, 2 days off out of 3. Yes. So I took the fire department. I did pretty good there. I was fireman of the year in 1974. And then by 1979, I had quit and gone full time into treasure hunt. But I made it, you could trade a shift on the fire department. In other words, work 48 and then you're off 5 straight days. I did that a lot. And from Sarasota to the Keys at least once a month. And then finally I quit the fire department, moved to the Keys full time. Art McKee, the father of modern day treasure hunting, I talked to him on the phone the day before, and he said, Fizz, I'll be there tomorrow, and we'll go out on the Black Ledge. And so I said, that you're in the newspapers today, Art. The Keys newspaper said, you're the father of modern day treasure hunting. And he said, well, that's okay as long as they don't call me the grandfather.
That's right.
I probably told that one last year.
That's all right. You can tell it again. We also want to know what is the biggest innovation in y'all's minds in metal detecting, treasure hunting, and that you've seen in y'all's years of experience?
Last summer, we went out on one of the treasure hunting boats in the 1715 fleet, and they had a new kind of mag side scan, all integrated with the computer.
And a ferrous, non-ferrous sea sled.
Oh, really?
And we just sat there, and it was all built into the autopilot of the boat, and it tracked and it did everything. I went, oh my God, this is magic. I mean, we were bouncing Loran lines, trying to do Loran line
No, that was
searches.
in the book.
Oh,
I remember that in your book, Sid.
Yeah.
that would drive you insane.
Wouldn't you
doing
have
that.
loved to have this new innovation then?
Yeah, the equipment that they're using now on these boats is certainly the next generation. And instead of, we were using, eventually we got a Del Norte tri-spawner, which is extremely accurate surveying gear, so a closed circuit surveying gear, which was great. It was accurate to within about 3 inches of actual position.
Wow.
So it's pretty hard to beat that even now.
Yeah.
But now, instead of hand plotting your finds and trying to integrate them with another chart that shows all of the anomalies that the survey boats have done, it's all in one package and presented on a big screen TV on the back of the boat. So you can see where the anomalies are relative to your position, and you can see real time as you're digging a hole, where the hole is, and you can work the boat over to where that anomaly is by watching TV and operating the winches on the boat. It's pretty
It's
phenomenal.
unbelievable.
Oh,
Isn't it?
we were absolutely amazed by it.
And that's really interesting. Fred, what about you?
And mainly the new metal detectors coming out. I mean, it's like there's a new one out every year, and they're getting more advanced and more advanced, and they're getting so advanced that to me they ought to take a couple of steps back. They just get too complicated or whatever. Because I started with a Mine Lab Excalibur, and then moved up to the CTX 3030, and then the Equinox, and now the Manicore. I've got a Manicore, and Terry and I just got the Legend sent to us to test the Legend out. So I think if they could come up with the perfect metal detector, it would tell aluminum from silver and gold, and forget about all the fancy stuff, and let's go back to the basics.
Well, that would take the fun out of it, wouldn't it?
Right? We do a lot of digging, and we do a lot of.
Well, that's all part of the fun, you know.
Yeah.
What's it going to be?
What's it gonna be?
You
Yes,
know,
yes.
I know, Terry has used for years, he used the old Mine Lab Sovereign.
The Sovereign. I mean, I found that they'll never make a better detector as far as I'm concerned.
And we're using the XP Deus now, aren't you?
I
Now
got
you're going to
the
use a
XP
Legend
Deus,
too.
The problem with the new detectors is, I was born, we didn't have electricity. We lived on a farm, it was a big deal when we got our first radio, and TV, it was a black and white TV, and you could buy a
And when
little.
the president was on, you had to watch it. Because you still change the channels.
Stuff.
If you got 3 of them, you change them.
And really the key to metal detecting is knowing the beach, knowing the area. Any detector will find it, and no detector will find it if it isn't there. So that's the key. But these new detectors are just too complicated for this old guy. When it makes a beep,
If it makes a beep and it's the right sound, dig it.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'll see a guy over a target, he's going back and forth, he's looking at these numbers. Then he gets sideways, and he looks at these numbers, trying to decide whether to dig it. I would have just scooped it up and looked at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So much easier.
Absolutely. We even found, on the site, we used aquapulse. And when we went back to detecting, we checked out a lot of different ones, but we just knew the aquapulse. We knew how she talked. We knew, they're pretty simple. They're on, they're off, that's it. And, but every hit, even if it's a piece of junk on the surface, underneath could be some gold. And we would find that out on the wreck sites. There'd be an old soda can or a beer can, or somebody threw a wrench over, and that's what you're detecting. You move that, and underneath was a gold coin or a gold bar or a piece of jewelry. You dig up every hit and you go back and check it again. You never know.
Well, I remember you telling the story, KT, about maybe you and she were on the bottom, and you were the mailboxes had blown a big hole, and you had the detectors going, and you got a hit, and you had to plunge your hand up to your shoulder in the side of the hole, and you pulled out. Didn't you pull out a little box that was full of?
The Emerald Cross and Ring.
Yes.
Well, when these holes that we dig is actually using prop wash deflectors that would mount on the back of the boat and direct the prop wash down. We would anchor the boat in a 3-point anchor so it would move around over an area that we wanted to excavate. And then that prop wash would blow down and actually blow the sand and sediment, the overburden, away. Some areas that could be inches, some areas feet, some areas it was up to 30 feet of sand. And this area was very deep sand. It's called the quicksands. And because the sand did move around a lot in storms. And we had been finding a lot of material in that area. That area was producing musket balls and muskets. And every time we passed this basic line that we had drawn on the charts, we'd find a couple of gold bars. They were matched. They were just little gold bars that matched together. They were high quality. They were 23 3/4 carat and no tax stamp on them. So we assumed they probably belonged to the church, because if they had been contraband, they wouldn't have any markings on them. And every time we go past this, we'd find them. We always found two of them. They might not be together. You'd find one on one side of the hole, and these are huge holes, 30, 40 feet across on the bottom, and very deep sand on the sides. And then one late afternoon, another diver, myself, Rick Ingerson, he had a large loop detector. I had a smaller loop, and we'd stay as far away from each other as we could because we'd set each other off. And he's got a hit in the berm, this big sand berm, about, I don't know, a foot or two up. And you just can't get at it. You know, as you dig in there, it falls back down. You dig in, fall back down. And so we had to go back up and redig the hole. And we did that a couple times, knowing we could easily lose that hit, but we couldn't get to it. Finally, just stuck your arm in as far as you could into the berm, and you felt it, and it came out, and it was this little box, this dark gray box. This area of the Atocha site, a lot of lobster pots, and they bait lobster pots with sardine cans. And this looked to Rick, and I could hear him mumble sardine can under his breath, and I had it in my hand and went, I don't think so. We brought it up to the surface, and we're over on the side, and of course, you're not supposed to open these things, you know, so leave it for the idea. But my God, the top just opened up. What could we do? There it was.
I'm sure it did.
There it was, and inside is the emerald crossing ring, just like it's, you see it in the museum. It's huge emeralds in it, beautifully ornate, just like the day it had been shipped away in this little silver box that we almost missed getting because it was stuck way in that berm. The other thing that's unique too, and I know that all of you can relate to that, is that gold is very cold underwater.
Oh, really?
And so if you're digging your hand in a berm for something, and it's cold to touch, you go, yep, I got a gold bar, or I got something gold, because it's cold to the touch.
I wonder why do you think that is?
Very conductive.
Yeah, it's very conductive. It's essentially the same temperature as the water, but when your hand touches it, it's not like the sand, which is an insulator. You touch the gold, and the heat from your hand just kind of goes away. So it feels cold.
Now, are the silver bars like that too?
Not that I remember. How about you?
No, just heavy.
So you really know, so good, I got a gold bar.
Yeah.
A lot of these fellows that are sitting here have had really good luck on the 17-15 fleet. And we're all enthusiastic about Florida's Treasure Coast here. You know, it wasn't our primary area. We still spent some time working these sites, and we still come over periodically and work the beaches like these characters all do. And I have to tell you, if you have an interest in metal detecting, there's probably no better place, as Carl said, about just come to the treasure beaches. I want to include a small little story in that, and embed a story about it. Years ago, Katie and I took a break from working the Atocha and Margarita sites, and we were sent up here to the 17-15 fleet to do a magnetometer survey. And one day while we were getting the boat ready to go out to sea, there was a fellow that walked up and was asking us questions about our equipment and what we were doing. And he told us this story about how he ended up here on the Treasure Coast. And he said that he and his family were from Ohio, and they planned a Florida vacation and came down not knowing that there had just been a giant hurricane that had come through. I believe this was probably in the 70s when this event happened. And my memory serves me correctly. And he and his family had never been to the ocean before. And his whole perspective of the ocean was from some TV show that he had seen about people in the Northeast where they go and dig up clams on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had rigged up a screen with a frame around it and a shovel, and he was going to go down to the beach and dig up clams, and that's what he and his family were going to have. Going to be a new and unique experience for them. So they were in Fort Pierce, and he went to this beach area, which there wasn't much going on around there, and there wasn't any buildup of houses or whatever. He thought, oh, this would be a good place. And again, this is right after a hurricane. He didn't know anything about hurricanes at all. He noticed that there was a lot of damaged houses and things around, but he was on vacation. So he got the shovel and he started digging up sand right near the water, and he saw this gold thing in the screen, and he picked it up, and he didn't know anything at all about the 17-15 fleet or about shipwrecks or anything. He was looking for clams, and he was from Ohio anyway. So he talked to a couple of people back at his hotel and he was staying in, and they said, oh yeah, there's a coin shop over there. You ought to ask him about that. And so he took it to this coin shop, and they immediately offered him $20,000 for this coin. And he went, maybe I ought to look into this more. And so he had found a Royale.
Oh my God.
On the beach.
Wow.
And
Looking for clams.
he eventually did sell the coin and sold his house in Ohio and moved his family down to the Treasure Coast and never found another thing. But he wasn't using a detector. He was still out there with the shovel. So who knows what he would have found with the shovel.
Yeah, we do have a question for everybody from the Diggin' Canuck. Wants to know the most bizarre comment a person has made to them while detecting. So, Fred, you want to start?
I have to think about that.
I mean, if it's X-rated, kind of, you know,
No,
temper it down just a touch.
Well, I had a guy one time tell me I was good looking.
Guy? Was he drinking Bud Light?
Oh!
But up, Paul.
I walked away flexing.
Yes.
Oh, you didn't turn your back to him. No.
Don't pepper your step.
I'm sorry, Fred.
Well, you didn't prance at all?
No.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh!
Now, Carl, I know somebody who said some really strange stuff to you.
I had some little kid ask me if I was looking for landmines. I said, "You're just about to step on it."
Are you gonna lose your leg, you little buzzard?
Carl, I'm missing my big toe. And I told my grandkids, they asked, Grandpa, what happened to your big toe? I said, Vietnam. I'm looking for landmines. Onward.
Oh!
No.
Oh,
That is so cool.
well, the Vietnam machines are pretty darn good. I had one of those. Very sensitive. They were just looking for the one little pin in those things. Did you have one?
No.
No.
He had his toe.
I don't even know if
What
they're
about
still
you guys?
available.
Well, we were normally out on boats where everybody else was using detectors too, so we didn't get too many comments like that. I can't think of anything particularly unusual while we were out walking around on the beaches with detectors. Can you, Katie?
Not on the beach, but you see on the boats and of course the mailboxes look, you know, the prop wash deflectors, and people would ask if those launched the divers. You say, oh yeah, those are divers. Yeah, those launch the
You
divers.
just kind of get in this side and go, whoosh, down they go.
Yeah.
We had another question from Joe Veazey. He wanted, and he said, ask Captain Fizz his favorite way to drink rum.
All day.
And his favorite rum is Captain Morgan.
Oh, that's Carl.
Well, I'm really lucky when it comes to that. Before I do a show, and I do all the pirate shows and a lot of the metal detector clubs and things, and I always tell people to bring rum, and usually I'll score 3 or 4 bottles. Some of it's great and some of it's cheap. But I've discovered that the $12 bottle will get you a lot drunker than the $50 bottle.
Long-term
Yes, it will
research
work.
on that.
A lot of
True
research.
story.
A lot of
Yeah,
research.
well, yeah, I had to know. Thank you.
Terry, we got one from Medicine Man RN, wants to know the Otter Tail and Black Lake at Vacation Village. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. I'm very familiar with the Otter Tail, but.
Okay, he used to, I guess he vacationed there. Phil Myers wants to know what your favorite detectors are right now. So Carl, let's
The
start
one I
with you.
just bought from him, the Equinox.
That's right.
Good answer.
That's a good answer. And Terry, you're now.
Okay, I'm very impressed with the DS2, but every detector's got some serious problems, and the DS2's got a couple. And I believe I'm going to be very impressed with that Legend. It's a well-built detector.
It is, isn't it?
Very well built, and it's half the cost of most of this other stuff.
Yeah, and I have heard, and I don't know, you just got a Manicore,
Yeah.
right, Fred? Now, I have seen some videos and I've talked to a couple people that they say it's okay, but once you get in the surf and you take it in the water, it just goes ballistic. Have you found that?
I haven't taken mine in the water. I'm in the wet sand and ankle deep, but not in the water.
Now, does it react in the surf with falsing?
Not really. When I first took it out, it was chattering a lot. And the nice thing about the Manicore, you can sit and just dial down the sensitivity and it'll get rid of the chatter just like that.
Now, how long do you have to take it though? How much depth and stuff are you losing when you have to reduce that sensitivity?
I've been finding little tiny pinhead pieces, real small pieces. So I don't have any trouble. The factory setting is 20 on a Manicore, and I don't have any trouble finding anything. I don't dial it down any lower than 20, and I've found some little tiny pinhead pieces of copper and different metals deep with the Manicore at 20. So I don't worry about that.
Well, I hope that it's a killer detector. I have not seen it. Phil can't seem to get it in. There's just not any there. So
if you want to borrow mine while you're here, you can try it out.
I'll definitely check it out. I'm going to be using the Deus too. Syd and KT, what are you guys using?
Well, we do primarily underwater, so it's a different field than the folks that are working the beaches. And so the detector that we use underwater isn't really the best one to use on the beach. It would be kind of a compromise detector on the beach. But underwater, we use aqua pulses.
Well, that has been the standard for
a long time.
Treasure diving for many
They're
years.
hardy, you can break them down so they're small ones, and they come with various, attachments. There's got the probe is very good. It's very sensitive. It's hardy. It's not prissy in any way. It's got two knobs, and it's hard to break things off of them. Though you can. I mean, you can ruin a detector real fast. It doesn't take much.
Oh, sure.
And it's what we know. It's just a simple sound, on, off, a little growl. That's about it.
Yeah, we use it probably a little different than most land-based because people now on land also use little probes like the carrot or whatever, and we do the same thing. We usually have two aqua pulses, one set up with a probe, and the other one is the loop. So as soon as we get hit, we turn the loop off and then just use the probe to isolate it. It's much faster that way. So there's some similarity there to land.
Well, I've got a question for the two beach hunters, Terry and Fred. How often do you use your pinpointer on the beach?
Never.
I don't either, and I to me, I find it hilarious when you watch YouTube videos and they're there with their detector and they get the signal, they go over it 15 different times, different directions. Then they set the detector down and they get their pinpointer out. Why do you have that big beach scoop with you? Pop up a couple of scoops and use your detector.
Yeah.
I have never understood why you would want to use a pinpointer on the beach.
Technique I use, I'll take my scoop and I'll dig down till I no longer get a signal in the hole, and I'll walk up the beach just a little bit to get away from the waves, and I'll just shake it and drop a little there and hit it with my detector, see if it's there. Do that 2 or 3 times, then you've got end up with a little tiny pile there, and pick out whatever you've got in there. It's simple.
Yeah, that's the way we do it.
I get that.
If that's a small part, but if it's a piece of iron or something, a large artifact, then it's going to be real easy to find.
Yeah.
Remember, again, underwater, the reason we're using probes is because we're working in an area where the visibility is very, very limited. And having a scoop there isn't really doing it. You're fanning by hand or whatever, and sometimes you can't really see what you're actually doing. And so the probe is really useful in those environments because you can isolate where the hit is and kind of dig down to it, fan down to it.
But I agree with you guys. I mean, you really can zero in with your loop. If you know how to use your loop, you can find the spot pretty fast.
On my detector, I'm out there so much. I'm so familiar with it. When we have the metal detecting hunts, the club puts it on, they have a pinpoint hunt. This last year I didn't do, I got second place, but the year before I won, and I don't need, I know right where it's at. But my advice to people, when they're out there with a detector, is, you know, when you first start and detect it and then move 90 degrees and go the other way, and that will pinpoint it for you. And if you are digging, you get to a couple of scoops and you have it pulling up, go to the other side of the hole, which chances are you're going right by it. So if you come from this way, and if you lose a signal the very next dig, you'll get it, because as you lift your scoop up, it'll suck it down.
Yeah.
And if you lose a signal, it's the next scoop that should be
Yeah.
up.
Because that happens a lot. I guess they call it a halo effect. If you've got the signal and you put a couple scoops on it and all of a sudden it's not there, take another scoop, because you might have turned it just on edge or whatever, and then it will come back.
I call that a ghost signal, when you just disappears.
Yeah, it just
It's
boom, it's
either on
gone.
end or,
On then,
Well,
yeah.
So dig it, put another scoop on it, and boom, there it is.
And that
It's
happens
as
a
long as
lot.
it ever
It's not
was.
an isolated incident.
but getting back to the Manicore, I found little tiny pieces of wire or anything so small that a carrot won't even pick it up. I mean, it's amazing. And you know, they're good pinpointers, and it's so small, I've had to get the pinpointer out, but I'll just take it, scoop up with my hand, and I'll find it in my hand.
Yeah.
It's just little tiny pinpoint.
Well, that's the thing that I found with the Deus too as well. It finds some of the little bittiest stuff.
Deep too.
You know, and I'm half blind, so I have a really hard time. Maybe I ought to start taking my pinpointer, but I don't. But it just, you know, there's just too much little bitty stuff and so much trash. That's something. What do you guys feel about all the trash on the beach? Don't you wish people would just take 5 extra steps and put their trash in the garbage can?
I wish the police department would send an officer out on a weekend and play clothes at some of the main beaches and ticket some of these people when they leave their garbage. If they did that for a couple of months, you'd see that cut in half.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you seen, I mean, you get a signal and it's a beer can, but there's 3 or 4 of them that's buried, because, you know, they sat there and they guzzled the beer and then they buried the cans, and you look over there and 10 steps away, there's the garbage can.
Well, something a lot of people don't know is when they renourish the beaches around here, they don't pump it from the ocean where it's available. They truck that in. And I remember one year at Turtle Trail, there was barbed wire, there was nails, there was construction pieces of wire and everything. And it took probably 2 years to clear that beach off of all the junk before we could get down to the real stuff.
Yeah.
It was miserable.
Well, there you go. It's you know, to quote Carl, the bureaucrats, you know, replenish the beach, replenish the beach. What they need to do is they need to have a little bit more confidence in Mother Nature, because she's been doing it for years and years and years, and it will cycle back around. If you take all the sand off, pretty soon there's going to be a storm and it's going to put a lot of sand back on. So
They're putting it on now, and yesterday, the day before, it was taken off already. They're not even done, and it's being disappeared. And it goes out, it covers the reef, you know, it kills that reef. It does nothing but harm. It actually does no good at all. They interviewed me on TV, you know, and I was so eloquent, it was just unreal. I mean, I explained about the turtles, I explained about the reefs, you know, I went into it. And then, I don't know why I said it, but I said it really irritates me that we're, as taxpayers, paying to put sand down on a 10-mile stretch of beach and we have no access. When I aired that night, you know, they said, well, Terry Shannon's really upset he doesn't have access to the beach. He didn't say anything about the reef or anything.
Well,
They
they
interviewed the lady, said it has to be done because somebody could fall off it.
that's the news. That's the news for you. They pick and choose, headline it.
Well, somebody making a lot of money, either that or they all have IQs in the single digits.
But the thing of it is, now, you made a very good point, Terry, about the turtles. Okay, the nesting, the turtles come up and they nest, but then these bozos are bringing all this sand in, and they're putting 3 or 4 foot of sand. Aren't they covering up the turtle nests?
Well,
Because there's no way for them to know where the turtle nest is.
when we first come down here, we had a fifth wheel camper, and we stayed right on the beach. And the 1st of April, they walked down the beach and shut your lights off at night. Nobody could have a light shining at night the 1st of April. Now they've moved that down to the 1st of May. They could put replacement sand until the first. They don't give a rat's butt. That's pretty kind.
It's close enough.
Worst thing I ever found was disposable baby diapers
Oh,
on
yeah.
the cabin site.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes,
That I've seen that. We found that.
Might be penny yet.
And, you know, we found hypodermic needles
Mhm.
and all kind of stuff on the beach, but,
One other thing though, there's a saying on the Treasure Coast, if you don't know, don't throw. I have some real nice artifacts that my neighbor pulled out of my garbage pail. You know, that I didn't realize what they were. I had some of these bronze ship spikes. And that's one of the first year I was down here, you know. And I said, well, they're railroad tracks. He said, railroad spikes. He said, when's the last time you seen a train on the beach?
well, that's true.
Yeah, yeah,
And, you
good
know,
point,
it's funny.
I didn't even have to think about that long, you know.
You mentioned that, Terry, because Mumblesman and I went over to England, and they said the same thing. Now, do not throw what you think is trash till we go through it. I mean, there's stuff that we pulled up, and I said, that's junk. And it was a piece of a bronze head's axe, you know, bronze age axe.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it looked like a junk. Let's throw it away. But there's all kinds of stuff, you know, Roman fibulas and stuff like that. And I'm sure you guys have found some of the stuff that y'all found down on the Etosha and the Santa Margarita. You had to think, man, this is junk.
Yeah,
Or the EOs, when they're encrusted objects, you have no idea what they are inside. You go, well, we'll take it in and, you know.
yeah, we couldn't always identify everything. Remember that area was a bombing range since
Oh, yeah.
World War II. And so there were hundreds of thousands of bombs, rockets, torpedoes, and mines that were scattered all over the place. Some of it, obvious what it was. Some were fragmentary, shrapnel, and you weren't really sure if it was from the ship or if it was something newer or whatever. And so, yeah, we didn't throw any of that stuff away. It all went back to the lab.
Did you x-ray them?
Some stuff we did, but most of the time, once it went to the lab and it started going through the process, you can tell what it was. Put it through reverse electrolysis, and you could see as soon as the accretion started coming
I
up.
had a real big piece encrusted like that, and I took it down to West Palm Beach and got it x-rayed, and it turned out to be a very large piece of lead sheathing of the ship.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
And I mean, it weighed a ton when encrusted when I hold it up. the piece.
Was it folded? Like sometimes
It was
they brought them and they fold them, they wrapped them up and so you could have extras.
It was folded up, yeah.
They were real heavy when you
Yeah.
folded them.
Yeah, and it was really thick. Normally on the beach, we find thin, real pliable lead, and they used to use it like duct tape, fix everything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this piece was really thick, and one of the ships, the Hampton Court on the 1715 fleet, I was doing some research, and it had 2.5 tons of lead just on the keel. And so that had to be pretty thick.
Yeah, it would have to be.
So, but this was a huge chunk. I've still got it, but I actually took the incrustation and I melted it down with muriatic acid
Mhm.
solution and just watched it dissolve. And there was a spike in there as well as the. And you can see that on the X-ray. I've got the X-ray. You can see the spike in the X-ray with the folded over lead.
That's cool.
That you.
Speaking of lead sheathing, the Margarita was also sheathed in lead on her bottom. And oftentimes, if you look at the lead sheathing, you'll see an imprint that looks like fabric on one side.
Yeah, I've got some of that.
And it's because the lead sheathing there was obviously to keep the teredo worms from consuming the wooden hull. And so they put a layer of burlap, which they tacked to the bottom of the hull. And then they laid the lead sheathing over that and kind of hammered it down and tacked it down. And so sometimes you'll see the imprint of that burlap that was on there. And that was kind of a sacrificial layer in case any of the lead got torn. The teredo worm supposedly would go after the burlap rather than going straight into
I've got some of that, and I've also got some with the nail holes in it as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, Sid, there was a story that you told me a couple years ago, I think, that you found something and you were just wailing the tar out of it, trying to beat on it to find what it was.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody that story?
Not long after I started with the company, we were out doing magnetometer surveys, and obviously we were generating a lot of hits because of all of the more modern anomalies that were masking the presence of the stuff we were looking for. And I had read all the books about the Atocha and the 1715 fleet that were out at the time, and it was obvious that there were a number of cannons that were still missing from the Atocha. And being a new guy, I wanted to be in there and maybe find those cannons. That would be pretty cool to find a cannon. So we got this hit, this anomaly near a small patch reef out in deeper water, about 60 feet of water. And I got this hit while we were doing a circle search, and started fanning into the sand where we got this hit, and this roundish, tubular shaped thing about the size of a cannon started coming out of the sand. And I'm like, wow, this has got to be a cannon. And the other diver that was working with me actually went up to the boat. He swam up to the boat to get some more digging apparatus while I was down there by myself, and I just kept fanning this thing out. And I had a dive knife with me. The butt end of the dive knife had a little hard place on it that you could use as kind of an underwater hammer. And there was concretion on this thing, and I had uncovered maybe about 4-foot section of it, 4-foot long section, and round just like a cannon barrel. And I was really excited. Again, I was fairly new at the game then, but I really had this mindset that this is going to be a cannon. So I started banging with my knife, knocking the concretion off to see if I could see any markings on it. And it wasn't a cannon, it was a 500-pound bomb. So yeah.
I thought I found another large anchor, and some of these anchors, you know, the shank is really large and they're very long. And again, starting to dig on it, and it was buried quite a bit in the mud, and then it started sizzling.
It was a 5-inch rocket.
Yeah.
It sizzled.
It sizzled, yeah, it was still sizzling. You know, but not all bomb issues were bad things to find. Of course, they were on the Atocha site because there's bombing area, and if you dug a hole and there was fragments of bombs everywhere, you had to dig them all up because there might have been something else there. You had to do it. And it could take days to pick all these up. But when we were out in Hawaii, we were looking for a bombing site from the attack on Pearl Harbor. The attack on Pearl Harbor was December of 1941, but Pearl Harbor had been attacked twice. The reason I say this is March 1942, the Japanese came back again and dropped bombs. And we were looking for the site of where one of those bombs dropped. The history, some intel on it. And now we're looking for bomb fragments and excited about it. And we did. We found where it was. We found bomb fragments with kanji written on some of the parts of it. And we just laughed, thinking years and years we cursed these bombs, and now we're excited about finding bomb fragments. So it's all relative, you know, the eye of the beholder, right? Treasures in the eye of the beholder. Sure. And now those bomb fragments were exciting to us to find them from a bomb that was dropped by the Japanese in March of 1942 in Oahu.
Yeah, wasn't that the trip y'all were looking for that plane that was Nihao?
Nihao Zero. It was all part of that,
Yeah.
that time period.
That's another book y'all have got.
Yeah.
And that's a great book as well. See, people don't realize some of the experiences that y'all have had, and that had to be really cool.
Well, like we were saying before when we were having dinner, you know, we just like, all of us like finding stuff. Whatever it is, we just like finding stuff. Right?
Correct.
It's fun.
And history plays a big part.
Oh, yeah, history, of course. Yeah. But finding stuff.
Yeah. When I found this coin, I knew what it was. I could see it was a crust of it. I could make out the shell. And I put it in my pocket. It's my first one. And I took 2 steps, took it out and looked at it again. You know, and that coin got looked at, I bet you 15 times before me home, and I wasn't that far from the trailer. You know, it's just a real thrill.
Well, what was the first thing you found, Cap?
You're probably not going to believe this.
I believe anything you tell me, within reason.
I guess the year must have been about 1970, maybe 71. And I'd never used a metal detector before. A friend of mine drove down from Ohio and he brought a metal detector. I was living in Sarasota at the time on the fire department. And he said, let's go to a beach and we'll find some coins. I'd never used one before. We drove to the beach, parked, and then we stepped over the guardrail, and now we're officially in the sand on the beach. And he said, here, you use this. I said, I've never used one before. He turned it on, and he said, now you just start going like that, and then it'll make a noise when it sees something metal. I didn't take one step, and the thing went off. I said, wow. So he dug it up, and it was a spoon. but black this was just getting dark. So I thought, wow, stuck it in my back pocket and we went on. I think I found 11 cents, a couple of gum wrappers, and it was pretty much the prize of the night. And so we got back home and his wife was there at my house. She said, well, what'd you guys find? We said, well, this is, and then Kenny said, no, where's that spoon? I pulled that spoon out, and it was all nasty and black. She went in the kitchen and started rubbing on it and cleaning it, and then she came out and said, what is this, a joke? And him and me both, I don't know, it had CF on it, my initials.
It truly was meant to be.
That's what she said. And I said, well, why didn't I find any money then?
That was not meant to be.
Because I still have it.
Now, what was the first real valuable thing that you found when you first started with your treasure hunting in earnest?
Good question. Well, I found a lot of trash and junk, but then after I got down to working on the Capitana 1733 fleet, the first nice, wow, my gosh, look at that, was a gold ring. And then the second nice thing was a clump of 4 coins, 4 1732 pillar dollars.
Nice.
Yeah. That's,
You're not married now, are you? Anymore. So you got to keep the gold ring.
no, I didn't actually.
That was a shock to my
At the
life.
time, at the time, I wasn't, but I had 2 small kids. In fact, I moved to Florida, just me and 2 small kids, no money. And I was lucky. Started making money, got a job on the fire department, started treasure hunting, ended up working with Jack Haskins for 32 years. And there's a group in the Keys right now, the Keys Historical Society. We're just now talking about, we think it's time that Art McKee, Mel Fisher, and Jack Haskins, who are all Keys residents. I'm not saying there aren't good guys anywhere else, but them 3 guys actually were the cause of tourism and millions of dollars coming in, like you said.
Absolutely.
Whose name is on that in Tallahassee? Don't get me going on that.
Oh, yeah, I understand. I'm with
We'll
you.
push that button.
Anyway, those are 3, there might be more, but those are the 3 that I know and I was associated with and worked with. And we had a lot of good times. I drank a lot of rum with Mel, especially on Division Day. And he always said, I forgot my billfold. Yeah, that's all right.
So there was a story that I want you to tell, Captain. We talked about a little earlier about the ghost ship.
Oh, well, that was one of my part-time jobs on the fire department. When I wasn't treasure hunting, I would work on a net boat. It wasn't a big net boat, small net boat. And
You may want to explain what a net boat is to these folks.
oh, well, it's that was about 26, 27 foot long. Had a big net piled in the back, lead line on one side, floats on the other.
Finger netting fish.
Yeah, and then whenever we'd see, like, we netted more mullet than I thought was in the universe. Billions of mullet. Miles long, those things seemed to be, but they weren't worth 8 cents a pound at the time. But anyway, you strike the nets, you put them out, and then you make a circle and you try to scare all the fish in, and then you get on the end, and one guy pulls the lead line in, and one guy pulls in the floats. The guy's name was Captain Arthur Drumright, and he was an old Florida cracker. And he asked, he said, do you want to work on your days off with me? And I said, yeah, I do, because I didn't have a part-time job. And it's one night we were right off Siesta Key. There's a famous, kind of semi-famous place there called Point of Rocks. And it used to be an inlet back in the 1800s, right there, just on the south end of Point of Rocks. But we're just offshore from that, and we're beautiful night. It's like 2 in the morning, the stars are, the water's flat as a board, and we're pulling the net in, and I'm going to guess at 2 in the morning. And all of a sudden, I heard this, a wake break is like the bow of a boat is moving, and we're the only ones there, and our motor's turned off, and we're pulling the net in. So, Captain Drumright and I, we both looked seaward at the same time, and this ain't 50 yards away. It ain't half a football field away from. And here comes it glowing from oil lamps, a dozen or so around the deck. And I could see the wheel, and there was nobody at the wheel. And the thing's making 5 or 6 knots, and it's throwing that little wake, and you know how the waves are. And we're watching that, and we're looking on board, and we just watch that thing that goes right up north till you can't see it anymore. And I said, because I was new from Ohio, what was that? And he said, oh, there's sometimes some strange things. I said, have you seen that before? And he said, yeah, I've seen it before. And that's a true story.
Did you ever see it again?
No,
I
I never saw it again. But I used to live from Point of Rocks. The first highway right there is called Midnight Pass. And I used to run a little beach cottage there where me and my kids lived there. And so then later on, the other part of that I was talking about, we just got in from Ohio. I rented this place, and I had this little poodle dog that sat on my lap all the way down from Ohio. And so we're taking stuff out of the car, and I pulled a little utility trailer. We're carrying it into the house, and the dog was running around the yard. Next thing I know, the next door neighbor, who I'd never seen before in my life, come over and said, "Did you have a little dog?" And I said, "Yeah." And it was out in the road. Midnight Pass Road was, I didn't know it at the time, horrible for traffic in Siesta Key. So I run out there real quick, and I just get to her, and she looks up and licks my hand, and then she died. So the guy next door, he looked at her too, and he said, "Well, I'm sure sorry," and everybody's sorry, and everybody's crying. We dug a hole in the backyard, and I buried her. And then he went into my house when my kids were in there, and he had a girlfriend. They lived in the little beach shack next door, and I'm in the front yard, just I don't know if it's in the front yard. And she, the neighbor lady's girlfriend, walked across the yard, and we got up on the porch, and I opened the door for her to walk in, and she started to walk in, and my little dog came running into the house. That's a true story. So
either this is Pet Cemetery, the movie, or you
saw it.
buried somebody else's dog.
no, it just ran in and then it was gone. And she looked at it. In fact, she jumped back so it could get past her. Otherwise, I'd have said I was hallucinating, but she had no reason to be.
Stuff like that happens. You know, I was a county sheriff, and I dealt with a lot of families and deaths of that. I got 100 stories. It's a point line.
Yeah, I bet you got some stories from being a police officer up there. Now, Syd and KT, I know both of you, if anybody wants a really good read, hold the book up, will you, KT? Both of them. This is just an exceptional read. And one of my favorite parts is when you're talking about the arbutus. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The arbutus was
probably knew it when it was
long retired ex-Coast Guard buoy tender. And Mel purchased the vessel initially with great plans for it. It was a large vessel. We were and had been under attack from the state of Florida and the federal government over our admiralty claim on the Atocha. And prior to the Margarita being found, the Atocha was a big target for the feds as well as the state of Florida. And we went through lots of harassment over our rights to go out and work the site, despite having an admiralty claim on it. So Mel's great fear was that if we did not maintain a permanent presence out on the site, that the government would say that we were not fulfilling our admiralty claim by not being out on the site, and that they would sweep in and take possession of the site, contesting our claim to it. So the Arbutus was to serve two purposes. It was going to be like a diver dormitory out at sea, and his hope was to repower it. It had no engines in it. The engines had been removed, and it was almost 200 foot long. It was a pretty sizable boat.
But if you had harnessed the cockroaches that were on board, you could have propelled yourself to Cuba and back easily.
Easily, yeah.
I do remember that part in the book.
Initially, the boat was being used as a basis for a hydroflow, which is kind of a digging device that was used early on, which wasn't completely successful, but they did have divers, groups of divers that were living on the boat, and it stayed out there through all kinds of weather. It was big enough to be able to deal with really rough stuff. However, by the time I came on the scene, and later KT came on the scene, Mel had abandoned all ideas about turning it into a diver dormitory or a permanent workstation, and it was just a presence out on the site showing that we were there, and to make sure that it was an absolute presence. They used to put one diver on it, and then you would stay there. Normally it was a new guy. The Arbutus had all the creature comforts of home, but none of them worked. The head didn't work. There was no electricity. There was a microwave oven in there, but it had no power. Everything was coated with rust and kind of a salty slime. And so if you went out to the Arbutus and spent any time on it, within 3 or 4 hours, you were pretty much all red with rust stains all over you as well. And when the workboats were out working on the site, if we were doing mag surveys or if we were doing excavation, nobody needed to be on the Arbutus. However, when the boats went in, either due to running out of fuel or food, or the weather was turning bad, they had to leave somebody out on the Arbutus. And so everybody, all the new guys, got their turn. And so it was delightful being out there. So if you ever had any qualms about being alone in the middle of nowhere, and there were no lights, of course, on the boat, the only anchor light that was on it was actually stolen off of a street sign in the streets of Key West, one of those blinky, flashy things that's normally on and that's what they had for an anchor light on it. However, the boat was anchored out there for long enough that the alternative kind of business that was going on down in the Keys at that time, drug smuggling, the drug smugglers liked to use it as it's kind of a benchmark. They could pick it up easily on their radar, and would often meet out there or in the area for aerial drops or for other boat-to-boat drops, and use it. And Katie spent some time out there when one of those things was going on.
Yeah, we call it the Colombian Chamber of Commerce meetings.
I would imagine so.
They showed up, and the fast boats, no lights, all speaking very fast Spanish. And you wonder, are they're going to come out and they're going to find a bloody mess on the Arbutus when they finally come out to pick us up? It was hard to know what was going to happen to you. And you're trying to think, where am I going to hide?
And there's no place to hide.
No place to hide. No, you had to be very careful on it, because by the time we were out there, the decks had really rusted through in most of the cabins, and so the only safe place was up on the bridge. But you didn't dare wander around in that boat at night, because literally it was rusting into nothing. And yet at night, even when there was a little bit of wind, sounds transfer through the metal, and you could hear this kind of weird rustling noise that would be going on somewhere in the boat. And if you got up enough, if you were brave enough, I guess, you kind of crept down, went outside and crept down and went to the cabin underneath the bridge to kind of see where that noise was coming from. And there were so many cockroaches on the boat that there was a big giant garbage can in what had been the galley. And the garbage can would actually move around on the floor from the vibrations of all the cockroaches going around, bustling around it. So that was pretty exciting.
Our beauty studio, it was something that you dreaded, that you sort of knew your number was coming. It's like the draft, like Vietnam draft. You knew your number was coming, just.
So see, that's the thing. Most people think, and I know that we've talked about this, Carl, and people have said this to you, Sid and KT, all you people, that they think treasure hunting is all glamorous and finding, but it's certainly not, is it?
When we make the movie, it will be.
When you make the movie. But in reality, how much hard work goes in for every little find that you make?
So can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, I found a brick of either cocaine or hash this year on the beach.
Did you?
Oh yeah, it was about this fall. And
I got it.
pictures of it. Huh?
Is it what you have?
That's the best find you've made all year.
Yeah, was it good?
Anyway, it was on a real isolated stretch, so I picked it up and brought it back and called the sheriff's office. But, the first thought that you get in your head when you see that, it's all wrapped up with triple tape, and then they got a logo on it, is you wonder if it's a bag of cash, because they have a lot of money, see? So your first thought is open it up, and I didn't do that, but, there's a thing called fentanyl and that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so if
It
you
takes
do
all the
run into
fun out
something
finding
like that,
cash now.
don't pick it up, but, I was in law enforcement, I knew what it was, I picked it up. But it's out there, you find it.
Yeah, square groupers, it was a big deal.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Oh, yeah, they're just floating by.
This was actually on the beach, mid-beach.
Wow.
Very, very interesting. Somebody wants to know who's going to play you in the movie, Liz?
Well, I refuse Brad Pitt. I want somebody that's young and handsome and in good shape. I just made that up.
Got any acting experience, man?
Actually, somebody suggested, what's his name?
Bradley Cooper?
No, he's Angelina's father,
John Voight?
John Boyd.
Huh.
Well, you know what? That would be, there's a resemblance.
He's a pretty good actor. I've seen him in several movies.
Yeah, he'd be a good actor. He'd be a real good actor. They ought to do a movie about the Treasure Coast. Y'all could be in it. Because you guys were the 1715 fleet, and they're still working that fleet, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they're still finding stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be out there this summer.
And aren't they still finding stuff
Yeah,
on
Mike
the
Turner just
Etocha?
had a big silver hit last week, I guess.
I was on the beach metal detecting one day when they, on the 300th anniversary, when they found
Rolled
the,
all the gold.
We were flying overhead and got pictures of it, not knowing it at the time.
I've got pictures of them pulling the gold
Oh
out of
my
it,
God.
and it was priceless. I've got pictures of them holding up the first Royal, and there was a Japanese film crew
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a Japanese film
How
crew there.
perfect is that?
Yeah,
I think that oil sold for $500,000.
Bill Bartlett found that Royal there, and look at him sitting on the back of the boat holding that coin up. And, and I was the only one taking pictures from the beach. Of it all.
Priceless,
And then
priceless.
Jonah came ashore and he had a handful of escudos showing us the coins and stuff. It was just
And
fantastic.
it was a short walk, I would think, to shore.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just, yeah. You can just walk right out to the back of the boat, the stern of the boat.
So have either one of you wanted to go back and dive the Etocha again?
Interesting.
Margarita is my favorite wreck site. It was shallow. It was where I found my first coins or gold. A lot of current. I don't know. You could dive all day. I love the Margarita. We were back like 10 years after we did a special dive trip out there, 10 years after, took people out and they got to dive it and pick up a ballast rock, but it's, just been hammered to death. There's nothing to see, it's just,
Well, they're still finding stuff though, aren't they?
Yeah,
it's a huge site.
yeah, it's a giant, there's so much territory to cover there. And so much of it, you don't really find much. That's the reason that it's taken so long. I mean, certainly at the time that we decided to leave, we didn't leave because there was bucket loads of stuff left there. We left and we figured, well, I think we've gotten as much out of this as we can. We both agreed on that.
But they've found some really good stuff since then, but it's,
It's very few and far between now.
How much money have they actually spent to go and recover that stuff over the years?
Well, how much of the treasure do you think that has been recovered?
Total?
Yeah.
Well, when we left, it was estimated at 500 million. However, the prices of the treasure have gone up so dramatically in the past 10 years that it may be much more than that if you that was at the time. And so now I think that the value might be higher than that, just on the Atocha alone.
I mean, they're missing some silver bars, they're missing some cannon, but we were talking about before, that's the cargo, that's the stuff that when you go on an airplane that you check your bags.
Manifest.
But the stuff that you carry on with you, as you would on an airplane, is all that valuable stuff that you don't want to lose. And we don't know what that is, like the Emerald Cross ring and the church gold and the 10,000 emeralds and all the chains and personal effects. We have no idea how much that is.
Well, how much of that stuff was not in the manifest? I mean, Terry, you find stuff all the time that probably wasn't on the manifest of the 1715 fleet.
I went to a talk one time and this fellow had silver spikes. And what he said is they pulled out the bronze spike and put in a silver spike. That's how they smuggled it.
Bob Weller had those. I saw him at his house once.
Clever.
So there's all kinds of stuff.
I remember when a Atocha coin sold for $200.
That's right.
Because I sold some of them.
Yeah.
Thousands.
The prices have certainly gone up. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah.
When we found the main pile of the Atocha, we really thought our jobs were over and that we were going to flood the market and the value of all the stuff was just going to collapse. But the reality was that didn't happen.
What do we know?
Well, what were they when Mel passed? About $3,000.
Oh, a grade one was 2,000 or so. Now a grade one is good 6,000, 7,000.
You believe he used to sell 1715 8 reals for $5?
Oh, yes.
$5 for an 8 real.
But he did raise the price. I mean, a long time, people were
Yeah.
And he said, nope, this is what's going to be worth.
What is grade 1, 1715?
A lot.
Because there's just not that many out there.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the stuff in the museums.
Grade 1 or grade 1, 1715.
I don't know, thousands, I guess.
Well,
I've got some grade 1.
you find somebody in a bind, you might get one for about $800 or $900.
Yeah.
I mean,
If you find
Be able to
it.
get it
If
really
you find it.
inexpensive,
find
not
it.
anymore.
If you look at the stuff, like, in the two museums here, there's Mel Fisher's and then there's McClarty, correct? And then if you go to Key West, to Mel's museum down there, all the treasure that's there,
The treasure that's in the museum, the big museum in Key West, there's much more than what they have on display. They've been working to bring more of it out, but what they originally had on display there over the years was significantly less than what they actually had to put on. They just didn't have enough room to do that. And we were at other shipwrecks that you're putting artifacts out on display.
well, how many shipwrecks did y'all work with Mel Fisher, other than the Atocha and the Santa Margarita?
Atocha, Margarita, we worked most of the 1715 fleet stuff. We worked the Henrietta Marie, which was the slave ship that we found while we were looking for the Atocha, and that became a real big deal. We worked on wrecks down in Antigua and Barbuda. Worked on English wreck down in Antigua for Mel, and we worked on some Spanish stuff for Mel, Barbuda. So.
Well, you've got some stuff coming up, don't you, down in the Dominican Republic? And that's Spanish treasure as well, isn't it, Captain?
Yeah, I worked there or something like back in I guess 86 on the conception. We did pretty good. In fact, I did so good because everybody thought we weren't going to recover anything at all. The old story about, oh, that's picked clean, they're never, but we did pretty darn good. And I had a 2-year contract. And after I got back home, they said, well, we're canceling your contract and we're giving your lease to Tracy Bowden, because he was a local guy there. And he said he didn't want it before I went there because he believed there wasn't anything there. But after I had a successful trip, he pulled the strings and got me thrown off. And now that John Matera is in charge, he wants me to go back and rework the conception, which I'd be happy to do.
Once it gets in your blood, it's going to be there till the day you pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a matter of fact, they were thinking about calling this, for my sake, the last treasure hunt. I said, wait a minute, hold off.
You got more than that in you. Well, Terry, I think you're 81 now, right?
82, May 6th.
82, May 6th?
Need my
And-
address for something expensive?
Yeah.
And still out there?
I'm really blessed. I mean, really the treasure and the metal detecting is your health. I had a fellow come up and he said he would love to do what I do. And he said, but I'm just too old. I asked him how old he was. He was 62.
Yeah.
You know, it just, that's the treasure. And the next thing is the people you meet, the friends you make. I got in the mail today 6 arrowheads that this fellow made, these arrowheads, and they're just gorgeous. And he had never met me, but he read my books. He's read it several times. He'd come down and he'd give me these. You know, I'm getting stuff all the time from people, and you know, we're causing a lot of enjoyment out there too. They read the books, and you know, a lot of people, that's all they're going to see is our treasure. They're reading about it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a wonderful thing that we're able to do what we're doing.
Well, you know, you guys, all of y'all have found a lot of stuff, and it's not all gold and silver or jewelry. It's some of the artifacts that y'all have found. Let's talk about that just a little bit. Fred, you want to start with some of the artifacts?
But I did find a small treasure chest key.
You've got some picture there.
Well, this one here is one of my latest finds, and this is.
Everybody can see it.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this is. I've been told it's a religious artifact. It's made of bronze, and it's been tested, and it's copper. Bronze is made of copper and tin, and this has copper, tin, and silver in it, which means it's pretty old. And
how big is it if you were to hold it?
It's 6 inches wide and 7.5 inches tall.
Oh, so it's about like this and this.
Yeah, and it's relatively heavy. I put it on. Funny story. I put it on Facebook one time, and I got all kinds of remarks on what people thought it was. Everything from a toilet roll dispenser to a light switch.
Ooh, light
A light
switch, I like that,
switch.
yeah.
So
Now, I don't see the toilet roll.
but see, it does actually have a little roll. It's got a little roller on top.
Yeah, I don't see it as a toilet roll.
No, but I've been told it is a Catholic religious artifact, and it is Spanish, and we're trying to find out exactly what it is. And I was told by archaeologists that it's possibly a travel version of something that they would have behind the altar with a
really?
picture, a religious picture in it.
Very cool.
Surrounding it.
Very cool. Now, Sid and KT, I know in your books you have written about where you found like a dinner plate that still had food on it.
Had a bowl, it was a bronze bowl, and it still had the pickled fish bones in the bottom of it from the last meal that somebody ate on the Atocha. We found a pipe bowl that still had resin in it from it being smoked. Various individual things like a rooster's foot, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And, which is a silver rooster's foot, which is good luck, like a rabbit's foot is, but roosters in Portugal are considered good luck, and a rooster foot obviously didn't work real well for them. But that we found that type of thing, and earrings and buttons and all sorts of, shoe soles, right? Some little individual things that, and some of the pottery we found, you could still see the handprints of when it was made, because of course they're made by hand,
All right.
and you could see the handprints on them. So it was more than just, the precious things, it's the things that have
Yeah, well,
history.
to me, that stuff is.
We still find pottery on the beach,
Yes,
1715 pottery.
I don't.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I think it's a funny story. Terry doesn't think it's a funny story, but I think it's a funny story. I told him to meet me one day down at the beach, and I was walking up to him, and I was about 10 feet away from him, and I saw this donut sitting in the sand down there, and I pick it up, and it's a neck of an olive jar. So I picked that up, and I walk over to Terry, and I haven't even talked to him yet. I said, Terry, are you effing blind? And I held this up here.
I was heading that way.
I
would have regretted that, man.
He still says he owns half of that.
Well, the thing that would just amaze me is you found that bowl with the fish bones in it, and the storm that broke those ships completely apart, and how many storms since then, and there's a bowl down there with the fish bones in it?
We even found seeds that were on the ship, not carried intentionally, but they're offloading, unloading various ports and whatever, and there were seeds which we were able to plant, and they did germinate after all that time in salt water. And we found geckos, dead geckos, like we have here in Florida, that were on the ship when the ship went down, and we found their remains too. So lots of strange stuff.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's just amazing. What's some of the amazing stuff you found on the beach, Terry?
I told my wife one day, I said, today's the day I'm going to find a ring from a gold ring from 1715 fleet. I went down to one of my favorite spots. And the first
Which is.
I hear that a lot.
Ah.
But anyway, I
thought I had them.
found the gold band. It was kind of a large gold band, and I thought nothing to put in my pocket. And then I got a very, very ornate gold ring. And I called her on the phone. I said, I think I got a gold ring from the 1715 fleet. It turned out when I got home, I looked at got the loop out, and the little ornate gold ring had a 14K on it. And the band was a posy ring from the 1600s, and inside it's 18 karat gold. Inside in English script it says, "Godly love will not be moved." And I did a post.
Yeah, I saw that post,
Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing.
But you didn't mention where you found it.
On steel.
Oh, yeah?
Seriously, that's where I got it. And southbound steel. South.
How far is
How many paces?
Yeah. And then I found a little gold pendant. And what happened was the state archaeologist called and asked if I would take him and his friend metal detecting. He wasn't interested in metal detecting, but his friend was. And his friend takes off. My God, he's just gone. And I'm bored waiting for it. And I am by the steps that go right down to the beach. And the archaeologist was sitting on the steps, and I'm just running around with my metal detector, and I pulled out a gold pendant that's either off an Aztec or a Maya or Inca funeral mask. And it's high 22 karat gold. And according to Carl here, he said they're notoriously, low carat. So mine would be one of the older ones before they started watering down the gold. So.
Wow.
Now, what about
That's
you,
amazing.
Captain? What's some of the weirdest stuff you found on the wrecks? Because you know a
A
lot of wrecks.
fair amount of flintlock pistols, flintlock muskets,
That's got to
All
be really
kinds.
cool to find.
a couple hundred knives, all kinds of swords and the rapiers and cutlass.
Uh-huh.
We got one sword had a date on it, 1749. Stacks of pewter plates, knives, forks, spoons.
Have you ever found any bones, like human bones, in any of the wrecks that y'all
In
ever
fact,
did?
one of the first things I picked up on the Conception was a human spinal cord. The museum curator was more interested in that than the pieces of gold chain.
Well, yeah, I can see where that would be, yeah.
Got a nice bronze bell on a French salvage ship about 1780, give or take something, right next to the Conception. A lot of pottery. A few intact pieces of porcelain. Duke Long was a genius at reconstructing things. He was a jeweler by trade and a big clumsy gorilla during the day, but he had the delicate touch. I'd sit there at night and watch him assembling Ming Dynasty porcelain pieces. And you could look at that once he put it back together, you couldn't see the cracks. He took there's a lot of pictures of his repair work going around everywhere, but it's one of the best, absolutely. I can't think of anything on the ship we didn't got an Astrolabe. That one at Danny Sedgwick's auction. Unfortunately, I didn't take the coral out of it because it was all busted and nasty and not very nice. And everything was missing, but we still got $26,000 out of it.
Well, it's funny because I would think, like on the Atocha or the Margarita, there had to be people that didn't make it off the ship. Wouldn't you think?
We didn't find any human remains.
But, you find a bowl with fish bones in it.
Yeah, it's a
And
mystery.
it's amazing, isn't it?
We found,
But they were pickled fish bones, so maybe it was the pickling that, helped preserve them. We did find large
animal bones, like cow bones and pig bones. We found a lot of those on the Margarita and the Atocha, but no human bones. In there were 260 people that died on the Atocha that were below decks when the ship sank.
Yeah, that amazes me that you just
They
never.
used to batten the passengers down below. That hatch went down, it was locked, and the priest would hear confession, and pretty much you could bend over and kiss your goodbye.
What we did find a lot of, though, were crabs.
A lot of crab claws. They ate very well
On the Atocha site. Just lots of old crab.
Oh, really?
Yeah, crab claws, crab carapaces, all that, they had been there.
dining. They
Yeah,
did
they had been dining there.
Well, maybe to them back then, that was just it's just like lobster used to be, for the slaves and stuff.
Yeah, but the crabs are eating
The people.
Oh, okay, very well, that answers that one, didn't it?
Yeah, the high concentration there around the valley.
I understood what you said.
I didn't.
But we're all on the same page now.
That's it.
And maybe some of these people didn't, so I figured I better get a definitive answer there.
Is he telling the truth?
I think so. I believe it.
I don't look dumb, Cap.
I don't hear anybody arguing.
And you never will. You never will. So let's get this thing wrapped up. Let's have a story from everybody, and then we'll call it a night, because I know y'all have been gracious enough to come from near and far to join us tonight, and we've been on for almost 2 hours. So let's just wrap it up and have a story from everybody. So Fred, you want to start?
I just brought this along because this is a musket ball from the 1715 fleet, and I just found this Monday afternoon at the beach.
Oh, that's very interesting. How deep was it?
It was turtle trail.
So it wasn't very deep.
It was about a foot down in the shells, and it was down by at low tide, down by the waterline. And I was there with there was another guy from the Metal Detecting Club was there, a guy called Wayne. He found one, and I found this one here, and he also found a nice little copper nail down there too.
How good was the cut on the beach with all this wind?
There wasn't much of a cut. It was sanded in on up by the dunes. So where there was a cut, it was sanded all the way up to the cut. But a lot of the sand at the bottom was all removed.
Were the bags exposed?
There was a little bit of the bags exposed, and went back the next day, and there was a little bit more of the bags exposed, but it was all down, all the sand was gone down by the water line.
Well, see, isn't that the key? Wouldn't you agree, Terry, in the Treasure Coast? Is you got to be out there every day.
You gotta watch, that's where I have a tremendous advantage over everybody else. I live within walking distance of the beach. I'm out there every day. When I look at the beach, I've probably seen it the day before. I can tell if there's something different. But where he found that basketball a couple of years ago, I found 210 basketballs, and on a 3-day period there, and one Spanish, one real.
Very cool. Sid and KT?
Why don't you tell the story?
Go ahead, I got the other one.
One of the most frustrating days that I had on a margarita site, we had a bad day of anchors dragging and mechanical problems and new crew. I had a whole bunch of new crew members that were working on board who were still learning the boat and learning about the processes that we used. And I was trying to get the boat in a position where we hadn't yet excavated, and our navigational system, which is normally really, really good, unfortunately, we had a failure. So I was having to do it by eye. And so I asked the first mate to go down and look on the bottom. The water was very shallow, but I wanted to find an area that hadn't been excavated yet. I wanted to work right next to an area that we'd finished excavating, and I wanted to continue on, but I wanted to continue on in a newly unworked area. So I asked the first mate to go down, and he came back up and he said, I can't tell if it's been worked or not. There's sand all over the place. There's a little bit of grass. I can't tell. And then I had another diver go in who was experienced, and he came up and said he couldn't tell. And it was a really hot day. It was frustrating. I had just had a long day, a lot of problems and issues. So I just put a mask and fins on and jumped over the side. And I swam around a little bit. I saw an area that looked promising, and I said, here. And so I popped up and I kind of guided them. The water is only 22 feet deep. And
Well, the keys, it's just clear.
yeah, you can see that it was relatively clear. It's the keys. So I looked down and I could see where I wanted, and they winched the boat over in my direction. And rather than getting back up on the dive ladder, getting out of the water, I just decided I'll let them punch a hole here. We'll see how deep the sand is, and then I'll take a quick dive down, hold my breath, and then come back up, and then I'll get off the dive ladder and let the divers go survey and detect the hole. So they dug the hole. They dug it for maybe 2 minutes or something like that. I took a deep breath, went down, and it was all stirred up from the excavation. It looks like an underwater sandstorm while the blowers are working, but the tide runs really hard in that area, and so it was starting to carry away the sand as I was going down. And I just wanted to make sure that we'd gotten all the way down the hard pan, which was our target. And as I went down, there was this little clearing near the bottom, and I could just kind of vaguely see this kind of, well, it was kind of colored a little bit like this picture that he showed us, kind of like that, which stood out off the gray bottom. And as I got closer to it, I could kind of see in my peripheral vision, I could see the divers starting to come into the water and swimming down into the hole. And as I got closer, there was this rectangle on the bottom. And I got down closer to it, and I looked at what was there, and I looked at the divers coming down, and I thought, I'm not letting these guys have this. And so I just grabbed it all and pushed off I was just holding my breath, so I pushed off the bottom with my feet and swam up to the surface. And what it was 9 gold bars and 8 gold chains weighing 26 pounds.
Oh.
And I came up to the surface like this, holding it above my head, and then immediately went back underwater again. And the current was taking me away from the boat. So then I had to struggle to get back to the boat with it. And so
But you didn't let go of it.
Did not let go of it. So that from a really bad day, all of a sudden turned into a really good day.
I guess it would
That's
be.
treasure hunting in a nutshell.
That's
right?
treasure hunting in a nutshell. Just about the time you're frustrated when you're done with it, and something like that happens.
Yeah, of all of us, we've been on the beach, and you're not finding nothing. You're finding nothing but pole pads and other crap. And the last hole you dig, You get your last signal as you're on your way off the beach, and it's a gold ring.
The worst thing that happens if it's the first signal.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just changed.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
Because then the day just goes right
Right.
downhill after
You
that.
don't want to find treasure the first hole. Don't want to find, no.
I had a great story until he told his.
I'm sure it's a great story.
This year I had a friend from North Dakota come down, great guy, and I took him out detecting, showed him where to go, you know, and I couldn't go the next day, went back, same spot, and found a 4 real. You know, his first coin. And then later, a couple weeks later, I'm down there in this good spot, and I pull out a 1 real. And I belong to metal
This is
detector.
where?
Right close to Bond Steel.
Okay.
But I pulled out a 1 real, and I belong to a metal detecting club. They're having their Christmas party. So I had to leave. So I called up my buddy. I said, I just got a 1 real. He said, I'll come right down. He went maybe 30, 40 feet beyond me and got 2 8 reals.
Oh.
I learned to keep my mouth shut. I had 3 more Spanish coins, but I did pretty good this year. I got 3.
Now, you've
But the
done
thrill is in
very well.
sharing, isn't it?
It is. I
Like
get the
with
warm
us tonight,
fuzzies.
where these are.
When he called me up, said I got 2 8s, I just had this warm fuzzy just go right in my body.
Yeah. Right at the butt.
Just like when I
So-
found that father.
Yeah.
What story did you come up with, Katie?
It was a couple of years after the main pile. We were going back up the trail. We sort of hopped, skipped, and jumped down this trail to the main pile. And so there's lots of areas in between that we hadn't excavated or even detected. And as we're moving up the trail, again, it's a very fine trail. You get more than 20 feet on either side of it, you find nothing. We're finding bits and pieces. And one of the other dig boats had already been through this area, had dug a hole, and this is deeper, it's about 60 feet, maybe 5 feet of sand, hard packed mud. And they already been through this area, but our boat, Swordfish, we weren't gonna miss a spot. We were gonna go through every spot. We dig a hole, I'm down there doing a metal detector circle search, and I get a growl. Not a loud hit, just a And so I dig with my hand a little bit, still, but it's there. So I go up and ask for the airlift because it's just way too hard packed to dig. I dig on down almost 5 feet in a hole that the other treasure hunting boat had already dug and found nothing. And I found 12 silver bars. There's only one thing better than finding 12 silver bars.
It's finding gold bars.
No, finding it in a hole that somebody missed. You know what I mean, right? Yeah, finding it where somebody else missed.
Oh, yeah, well, we've all, our beach hunters, we've had this, you see where somebody dug, and they didn't find it or whatever, or they thought it was nothing, and then you dig up a gold ring. And this happens all the time. And all the guys I hunt with, they've all had that happen on the beach. And Terry, you'll know what I'm talking about. Fred, you'll know what I'm talking about. Is they set their detectors up with so much discrimination. Well, I'm going to eliminate pull tabs. Well,
Eliminated gold.
you're eliminating gold. And this happened one day. We were down in Daytona. This was, 4 or 5 years ago. And the Mumbles man was down there with me, and we were going on the beach, and the guy comes up, and he was wielding his AT Pro. He says, "Don't even bother going down there. We've been there for a couple hours. There ain't nothing there." So that day I found 2 gold rings and a big gold chain with a big gold pendant on it from some gangsta, But they found it all, So that just tells the tale right there. And you've had it happen, and you've had it happen. All of y'all have had it happen. So, Captain, what's your final story of the night?
Good question. First of all, about the metal detectors and discriminators, I used to have some machines that had them on them, but I've never used a discriminator. I'm going to look at everything, and I always have, and I've never missed a target. And then pulse induction came in like the late 70s, I guess. And I've been stuck with that until I just recently bought that one from Phil Myers, Equinox. What I'm gonna do with that machine is look for base camps. Anytime a galleon sank, the closest base camp was on the closest land. And in the Dominican, God knows where or what, but on bad, nasty days, I'll be out looking for the base camps inshore. I hope I can get good with that. I've only been practicing a little while.
Well, it doesn't take too much to really get good with it. I think you'll do very well. It's a good detector.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah. And I mean, if Phil says it's a good detector, you can take it to the bank. I have not ever found anybody that's more honest than Phil Myers. He is not the type that's going to try to sell you something just to sell you something. That's not in his constitution at all. If he doesn't think that it will work for you, he'll tell you.
He enjoys that, and that's why he's not open like 7 days a week, 12 hours. He picks and chooses what hours he wants to be in. I was over there a couple of weeks ago at a meet and greet kind of thing. That's when I bought that machine. But there was Jack Haskins and I were working the cabin site, and you get this big long hit. And of course, well, I know that's an 8-foot iron cannon down there. Should we put the blower over it or shouldn't we but we put the blower over it and we opened it up and it was an 8-foot iron cannon. But you know, if you were discriminating and they would say, oh, iron, and you think, oh, crap. But I said, what do you think, Jack? And he said, let's pull it out of there. So we lift bagged it out, rolled it over. It was only about that deep anyway. The blower got it out. And there's 208 reals stuck to the bottom of it. Every one of, that iron is going to oxidize it.
Yeah.
Mint condition, 208 reals stuck there. And we went out and drank a lot of beer that night. And this is the funny part of the story. Whenever Jack drank a lot of beer, he was more damn fun. We're in the pizza joint here in Sebastian. It's probably still there. Jack went into the boys' room and he came out and he's laughing. I said, well, what's so funny? He said, well, the sign in there said to use the ashtray, so I did. He busted out laughing, and everybody heard him because he's talking drunk and talking. And next thing you know, everybody in the restaurant's laughing.
Well, I can understand that. I can definitely understand that. I can understand that. Well, everybody, I want to thank you all. I'm going to turn the camera now. We're fixing to sign off. But everybody, I hope that you did enjoy this epic Treasure Tales show. And like I said before, I'm a very, very, very blessed man with the friends that I have, all those that are spending this time with us tonight, with Fred, Sid, and KT, Terry, Captain Carl. Unfortunately, Jimmy Crossbones couldn't be with us tonight. His wife has COVID, so I would like for you to join us in saying a little prayer for her fast recovery. And Mark Littleton, who has done work with Captain Fizz, is feeling under the weather. So let's say a little prayer for him to bring him back to health. And we hope that you enjoyed this time we had to spend together. This has been very, very informative. These people know what's going on. They know what they've done and what is out there to do. And like I said, I'm just so blessed that I have friends like these that come and want to share stories with us. So with that, we're going to say good night. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Tune in with us on Monday night for Treasure Talk. And I promise you, you will see every one of these people back on Treasure Talk very soon. So happy hunting, everybody, and dig deeper.